Hi, this is Charlie Orchard again with the fourth part of a four-part series of using Land EKG DataStore. This one involves using the History tab. And the idea behind that is to be able to compare sites over time, multiple sites over time. And so with that, I think I'll just jump right into it. And so we've got our demonstration site, and we've got a number of photo points, and we've got the transects. And quick review, our first effort was to just get people to go out and set up sites. And then it became something where it's like, well, how is this site changing or comparing over time? And so that allowed us to develop the History tab, or pardon me, the Comparison tab, which we went through in the third part of this series. And then the question became, well, how are consistent groups of sites beginning to respond to consistent types of management? So that has tied in the History tab. And so the History tab is right on your main desktop, I guess, of DataStore. And it's this central area. And when you go to History, what it's going to do is a couple of really neat things that are involved with that. One of them is that it's loading up right now. It's got to load up the actual sites that are present, and you'll see the sites here. But like the Comparison tab, where that you could see if there was data missing by going to the thumbnail sketch of all the data, this does that as well. And so here we've got, as you'll see, three tabs: the T100s, T200s, and photo points. In this case, we just have T100s and we have photo points. The one of the nice things is that the category to the right shows the first number tells you how many readings have taken place. And then the next one has to do with whether the fields of data have had data, whether each of these variables has had data entered in them, much like the thumbnail sketch. If it's green, it says that there's data. By hitting this drop-down picture here, I can go and it will show me each of these categories for each year, and it will show me the W is weather, P is production, G is grazing, C is cover. And so it's telling me that I've got all of my weather and production and cover, and with grazing I've got maybe a bit of a problem. So it happens to be this site was rested, but I'll jump to this. And so to do this, I'm just going to hold the control button down and click on C, and it will pop up. It should hyperlink me to that particular reading and that particular site. And in doing that, it actually may pop up a new, let me see if I've got to scroll down. Right here, annual reading. It took me right here, a new tab pops up. And so in this case, it takes me right to that site. I could if I've got data to put in there, I could go ahead and enter it. In this case, I didn't have any data because this site was rested. And so it says, well, there was no data. That's because 0 was entered in that. So in this case, I'm just going to X this out, and it will take me back to my field here. And I don't know if I can make it where that I've got more room. I guess I do, right like that. So each site, each year's worth of monitoring is recorded and is presented. And the idea is that we want to start asking ourselves, is there consistency? Are we seeing consistent patterns with any of particular sites in the same sort of ecotype or same type of pasture? So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull some of them in. This is known as the monitoring sites tray, and then this is known as the table. And what we're going to do is we're going to just pull data in onto the table. And so in this case, I'm going to pull T105 in. I'm going to pull T106 in. I'm going to T108 in. I'm going to pull in T111. I'm even going to go to a photo point, and I'm going to pull in PP07. And so we've got 5 sites here that, 5 sites that are recorded. My screen is a little bit off. I don't think I can make it move over. So you're seeing a little bit of missing there. But what we're going to do is we're going to move up and we're going to say, well, let's take a look at the cover report. What consistencies do we have? And so similar to the comparison tab with the cover report, it presents this in a little bit different fashion than what it did before. I'm going to show the tooltips off at this point. And the way this is presented is that, for example, I can turn off or turn on each one of the year's readings for just, in this case, T105 Ridge Road. If I want to include the semen in that, I could pull that in. If I want to include the Round Ridge, if I want to include Mud Butte, there we have all of them. And in this case, what we've got is I can highlight, let's go to something that we have. Here's basal cover for T105. And so we can see how basal cover has changed by turning the tooltip on. Actually, it requires me to hover over. I'm going to turn that off again. We can take a look at where the ridge road sat for basal cover for each of the years. And you'll see that ridge road was not red in 2012. It's right here, and so it had no reading in that case. Let's take a look at semen. The semen, we've got a range of somewhere between probably about 20 down to about, what is this going to be? I'll go to tooltip. This will tell me semen basal cover is 8 right there. One of the things that I can also do is this legend right here, I can turn off and turn on. And so in this case, mostly bare ground, litter, and basal cover is what we're really after. But I can turn the tooltip off again and say, let's just look at bare ground. I just want to look at bare ground of all of these sites over time and what's gone on. And so in this case, for example, semen bare ground, there's hardly any bare ground that's been shown there. But for example, on the ridge road, we've seen things that range from the upper 60s to the lower 80s, and everything in between. But what this does is this allows us to say, okay, this is the amount of bare ground that we've seen over time. Are we seeing some trends? Are we seeing some patterns that's going on? What about litter? Do we see, if we combine litter with bare ground, how much cover do we have? Or we can reverse that and say, I don't want to know bare ground, but I want to know what my litter and basal actually add up to. And so as you can see right here, the semen is consistently the highest site of all of these sites. Whereas the, looks like probably Round Ridge is the lowest as far as cover goes over these sites. So now we've got a pretty good idea of going, well, okay, are there some patterns that I'm seeing? Yes, consistently I'm low in areas and higher in other areas. Where do I sit relative to, for example, my cover? So once again, or my leaf height, once again, I can go and I can say, well, I don't want to see my maximum leaf height and I don't want to see percent live, but I do want to see my average leaf height. So in this case, for each of those sites, now we can hover over and it will show, or it will enhance each of those sites, the range that we've had, and it allows us to start to look at, okay, are we seeing some kind of a pattern here relative to what the year was? And once again, similarly, we can go to the plant diversity category and we can say, well, let's just look at grasses, for example, right now. Where are we sitting in range? We're ranging from 3 to up to 5, but mostly 3 plant species by and large we're seeing in each of those hoops on an average. We can jump up here and we can go to exit. we can say, well, where do I sit relative to my production and grazing report? Same thing, we can turn things off and on. I don't really care so much about my utilization of my cage at this point, but I want to see what my pasture production is. And so now the tooltip is helpful because it can give me an actual production that I'm seeing. But generally, we can see, well, where has the semen ranged over time compared to the ridge road? Or, for example, where is Mud Butte? How does it compare to what the semen is? And so it gives us, once again, multiple sites that we can look at. Any of these, I can do a screen capture and paste this onto a PowerPoint slide or something like this and be able to project that information. As far as the grazing index goes, same thing. We can compare, where that we're consistent, where we're not consistent over multiple sites. And then we can even go to our grazing records and we can say, well, I'm not going to worry about stock density. And I'm going to turn this off for a moment. And so now I want to know, as far as my grazing records, how many animal days per acre, am I running? And by and large, these have been fairly consistent. The year 2016 was a big year. And the fact that basically it was effectively doubled on all of the sites. And so once again, it's just a good way to present groups to begin to analyze this data over time with larger groups than just a single site compared over time. And then we can go to our weather and production report. And once again, we can take a look at, for example, I'll undo my cage, and we can see where we sit relative to amount of rainfall, total rainfall. And once again, I'm not as happy with the rainfall aspect as I am some of the grazing information and the cover information. But we can start to see that we definitely had some increases in production in some areas and decreased. And this correlation right here, 209.8 precip, I can't say I can actually tell you what the correlation is with that right there. So anyway, but the idea is that we're working on making it where that we can really look at just core indicators and how they're relating to a larger group of consistent sites and where we can start to see a trend that may be changing, because just looking at one site over time tells you one thing, but being able to group sites and start using it from an analysis perspective is something we found very helpful. So anyway, this is Charlie Orchard. This is the last series, or the last lesson on using DataStore. Hopefully this has been helpful. Appreciate you tuning in, and have a nice day.